Are you ready to revolutionize your relationship with money? Welcome to the Finding Financial Freedom podcast with the Frugal Physician, where Dr. Disha Spath will be your companion on this exciting financial adventure. Get ready to conquer debt, build wealth, and embrace a mindful spending lifestyle that will empower you to live life on your own terms.
Imagine Dr. Emily, a skilled and passionate physician, standing at a pivotal moment in her career path. She has just received a contract offer and is surrounded by uncertainty. Is the offer fair? Does it align with her career goals? This is where Contract Diagnostics shines. Their nationwide expertise, encompassing every state and specialty, positions them as the go-to ally for physicians. When they dove into Dr. Emily's contract, it wasn't just a review. They demystified complex clauses and provided enlightening insights, tailoring their approach to her specific needs. Regardless of whether you're taking your first steps as a new graduate or navigating as an established doctor, Contract Diagnostics delivers a tailored, comprehensive contract review, perfectly suited to your individual situation. Now, it's your turn to secure your future. Reach out to Contract Diagnostics at 888-574-5526 or visit contractdiagnostics.com. Begin your empowering career journey today, and I'll be cheering for you from the other side. Welcome to Finding Financial Freedom with the Frugal Physician, where we explore the paths to financial stability and success in the healthcare sector. I'm your host, Dr. Disha Spath, and today we're diving into a crucial topic for anyone in the gig economy of healthcare: income protection for locum tenens professionals. Joining us is Jamie K. Fleischner, president of Set for Life Insurance, a trailblazer in the insurance industry since 1993. Jamie's personal and professional journey through the challenges of disability and life insurance has led her to help clients navigate life's biggest risks. With a wealth of accolades and a commitment to tailored insurance solutions, Jamie brings a deep understanding of the unique needs of freelance healthcare professionals. Well, hey, Jamie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into this field?
I started in the industry in 1993 while I was in college. I actually grew up in the business. So my father was in the business and was really actively involved. So I was always kind of around the insurance business, but always said, that's so boring, I don't want to do it. When I was in college, I did a variety of internships and I decided, maybe I'll give it a try. And I fell in love with it. I really enjoyed getting to talk to people about what's truly important to them and talking about if anything ever happened and learning really their story and their values. So after college, I went to WashU in St. Louis. I came back to Denver and I started my own practice, and I've been doing it for 30 years.
Wow, that's a long time. And what kind of experiences have you had when it comes to physicians actually claiming disability? What have you seen?
Early on, I started working with physicians when I was at WashU. They have a great medical school, so I started working with people there. When I came back to Colorado, I immediately started working with physicians. And as they moved around the country, I followed with them. And so I've got clients in all 50 states. Being around for over 30 years, I've seen a really wide range of different kinds of claims and experiences. So I've seen all different kinds of people having serious illnesses such as cancer, or waiting for transplants, or autoimmune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, those types of things. I've had clients that have had severe injuries, car accidents, and I've had clients who've had even pregnancy types of claims, or migraines, or back strains. Or I had a client, she fell walking down the aisle on her wedding day in bad heels and tore up her knee and was out for several months. So I've seen the whole gamut of all different types of things. And so just having all those experiences, I think, helps me when I'm working with clients on all different kinds of scenarios, understanding how to get them the coverage, what they need in the coverage, and then also in the claims process.
Recently we've seen a shift towards gig economy for physicians. You said, you were following people around the country. I'm sure that's a lot more pertinent now as physicians are moving around more doing locums tenens jobs. So what kind of trends are you observing in the insurance coverage for locum tenens, and how has that impacted their need for disability insurance?
So back when I first started, a lot of people would take a physician position and they'd work at the same place their whole career. And now it really doesn't work that way. A lot of people that are coming out of residency now want to have a lot more agency over their careers. They want to have more work-life balance. So a lot of them are choosing to do locum work. How that impacts with the disability insurance is, first of all, in order to get the insurance, you have to show a pattern of income. And so sometimes that's hard to do doing locum work because it can be sporadic. So one of the best ways to counter that is to get a policy during medical residency or the first 2 years out, because the companies will automatically allow them to get $5,000 a month during residency, up to $7,500 a month the first 2 years out of training without having to prove any income. If you don't fall into those two situations, then you need to have at least a year or two pattern of work to be able to prove income.
Can you explain to us the basics of disability insurance and why it's especially critical for locum tenens?
The reason that disability insurance is so important is because you're insuring your most valuable asset. So for physicians, their most valuable asset is their ability to actually go to work and produce that income. So if something happens, if they become sick or injured and they can't work, their income stream just dries up. So it's really important to make sure that that's insured. It's especially important for locum physicians because you're really an independent contractor. So you don't have the luxury of having a group policy. So if you go and work at a large hospital, usually you have a group policy. And the group policy usually says we'll cover up to 60% of your income if you're totally disabled, up to $10,000 or $15,000 a month. So it does provide some coverage, although it's not typically as comprehensive, but it's there. If you're a locum physician, you don't have those benefits to fall back on. So it's even more important to self-insure and to provide those benefits for yourself because you can't rely on the employer.
So how does Set for Life Insurance customize policies for the unique challenges faced by freelance healthcare workers?
So when somebody comes to me, they request a quote. And so I look at all of their criteria and I shop it around. So I work as an independent contractor. I don't work for any particular insurance company. So I spreadsheet it. So what might be right for a female surgeon in California could be completely different than a male pediatrician in Chicago. Like it really depends on the criteria and the different companies. And so what I do is I spreadsheet it, look at what's most important to them, shop it around, and then make recommendations based on that.
What are some key pieces that locum tenens professionals should look out for when they're choosing the disability insurance policy?
Well, the most important part of a policy is the definition of disability. If you don't have a good definition of disability, your policy is worthless. And so a lot of association plans have sort of a watered down definition of disability. So what you really need to have is what's called own occupation. So what this says is if due to sickness or injury, you can't work in your medical specialty, and it's whatever you're doing at the time of claim. So meaning if you bought your policy when you're doing internal medicine, you later on go do interventional cardiology, something happens, you can't do interventional cardiology, your policy is going to pay you your monthly benefit, even if you can pivot and do another specialty or occupation. That's really critical. Most association policies will say, after 2 years, if you're able to do any kind of work, we don't have to pay you. Most group policies say you have to be totally disabled. So the most important thing for a locum physician to have is own occupation because it really keeps you in control of that policy.
So what if someone's doing some locums work on the side and working a full-time job? Is there any other policy that they should be looking at or any wording in the policy that they should be looking at?
So in that kind of scenario, it's even more important to have some individual coverage because a group policy, they're only going to cover your income that you earn through that hospital or through that practice. So they're only going to cover 60% up to a certain amount of that income. And so if you're also doing locum work, that extra income is not protected. And so it's really important to coordinate all of that income and determine how much you need on a monthly basis. If you are working both of those jobs, you're probably reliant on both income sources. So you want to make sure they're both properly insured.
So what kind of paperwork should a locums physician be keeping in order to document this sort of income?
So when you apply for an insurance policy, again, if you're not falling in the resident or first 2 years category, they need to have some kind of income documentation. So most locum physicians have 1099s. At the end of the year, they get a 1099. It shows what their income was for the year, or maybe they have multiple 1099s. So an insurance company will need some kind of financial documentation. So they'll look at the 1099s or the tax return. Sometimes if you take a locum job, maybe it's a year or a 2-year contract, they can also look at the contract for income verification, or even getting a letter from the employer. They just need to have some kind of verification for that income.
Okay, so they don't have to like keep a spreadsheet of every shift that they're working or anything like that.
No. So it just needs to be some kind of financial verification.
What are some important pieces of education for physicians for selecting the right insurance, and how does Set for Life support clients in making those informed decisions?
So again, when clients come to us, what we do is we do a spreadsheet of all of the companies, and then we do educate our clients on the important parts of a policy. So I mentioned own occupation. There are a couple of other riders, which are policy language to make sure you have in the policy. Own occupation covers you if you're totally disabled. Oftentimes your disability is not totally disabled. So it's really important that you have what's called the residual or partial disability rider in your policy. So what that says is you only need a 20% or 15%, depending on the policy, loss of income to be able to trigger a claim. So again, I've had people who've had back injuries or bad migraines, some kind of things where they're still working, but on a limited basis. Like you mentioned, in those types of circumstances, clients will call me, and that's when I say start spreadsheeting. So from the date of diagnosis, you can actually record what your income is on a month-to-month basis, and then the company will pay you that proportion of your loss when you're on claim. So it is important when you do go on claim to make sure you have that verification, the loss of income, or it also might be hours lost, because sometimes you get paid, the next quarter from what you did bill. I help guide my clients with that. So that's really important. The other thing to have on the policy that's really important is the ability to increase it in the future. So maybe you're just starting out, you're doing your locum work, and you just can only afford a smaller policy, but eventually you settle down, you have a larger income, and you want to increase it. It's really important to be able to increase in the future without having to answer medical questions. So if you've had an adverse change in health, or you're pregnant, or now you decided to jump out of airplanes as an avocation, whatever it is, the only questions they can ask in the future are financial. So that's really critical to have in the policy. And so we make sure all of these different types of riders are incorporated into the policy. And we also talk with our clients about what's most important to them. Some people just want less expensive. Some people want all the bells and whistles, some people in between. So we really do customize it. So what might be right for you might be totally different for somebody else.
Can you share any success stories or case studies where income protection made a significant difference in a locum tenens professional's life?
Yeah, well, I've had so many different claims. It's for locum tenens as well as just other physicians. The one that really sticks out to me was I had a client of mine. He purchased his policy during residency, orthopedic surgeon, and as soon as he got his new contract, we increased his policy. And about a week later, his wife called me and I said, oh, no, everything's in place. This client was in a really, really bad car accident. He was driving to work on his very first day and he hit a 18-wheeler and the car was on fire and he burned half his body. He was actually choppered to the hospital and his fellow residents were actually doing surgery on him and it was awful. The good news is he had this policy. He increased it. It was covering his new income. Even though he hadn't even started his new job, in anticipation, he increased his policy. And so he was on claim for about 2 years and he had multiple surgeries until he got his footing back. But the good news is he had that policy. Now he's back working, but he also had those increase options. So as he's moved through his career, he's been able to increase his policy because after all the surgeries, it would be really hard to go out and apply for a policy because the company could exclude all kinds of different conditions. Example is somebody who had a claim and it really made a difference. And I have had other claims like, you mentioned with locum work, which is kind of more contractual work, and it is a little bit more unique. I've also had circumstances where a woman, she had her first child, and then she decided, you know what, I want to take time off. I want to be a stay-at-home mom, or maybe only going in a little bit of time. So she really cut back on her work, which can also be similar to like a locum physician who's maybe just doing some contractual work. When she had her second child, she had major complications when she gave birth, and she was out for 2 years. Well, because she had her initial policy and maintained paying that premium, even though she wasn't working as much as she was when she bought the policy, they paid the full benefits because now she couldn't go back to work. So even though she wasn't actively working or was really working on a really limited basis, she was still able to file a claim. So a lot of people ask me, well, what if I have a policy and then I want to really cut back? As long as you pay those premiums, you'll still have that policy and it'll still pay those benefits. And so I think that ties in well with a lot of locum people, because there might be people sort of mid-career. They have their policy, but they still have, a mortgage and student loans or maybe some financial obligations. But maybe they're doing locum work for a year or two while they're just transitioning to a different part of life, or maybe they want to do some different types of things. It's still important to maintain that coverage if you're still relying on that income.
Very interesting. So when they pay the disability claim and someone has cut back their hours, do they pay a percentage of their original income or a percentage of the look back period?
For her, what happens is, let's say she had $10,000 a month benefit. I don't even remember how much she had, but let's just say she was paying premiums for $10,000 a month and she was staying home or just working a lot less, earning a lot less than $10,000 a month. The policy has contractual language that says non-cancelable, guaranteed renewable. So as long as you pay the premiums, you still have that amount of coverage. So if she was completely not working, it becomes a total disability contract, meaning she has to be totally disabled. It wouldn't cover partial because she couldn't prove that partial loss of income. So in her circumstance, she was totally out. And because she was paying premium for, say, $10,000 a month, the company paid her for $10,000 a month.
Well, that's good to know that we have that kind of protection available to us. With the healthcare sector's continuous evolution, what future trends do you predict in the insurance needs for locums physicians?
Well, I think it's going to become more and more important for physicians to make sure that they have their own benefits, something that's portable, something that they can take with them, and something that is also kind of malleable, that they can increase and decrease over time. So, I talked about increasing policies. The other thing, too, that a lot of people aren't aware of is you can also cut back or trim your policy. So again, maybe there's somebody who worked for a really long time and maybe now they're in their 50s and they just say, I'm just going to do some locum work. I'm not ready to hang it up yet, but I want to just travel. My kids are gone. Maybe they don't need as much coverage, so they can also cut back on their policy. It's not an all or nothing, and it's not like once you increase it to a certain point, you have to maintain that. So it's also really important at that time to come back and reassess, figure out, prioritize how much you need to have. Do you still need to have all those different riders, and make adjustments accordingly? But I think with a lot of the changes in the healthcare industry, I'm foreseeing more and more people needing to have more flexibility with their jobs. If they're moving, if their income is going up and down, it's more important to have a policy that's flexible, but also to be able to have the advice of what do I do as I'm making these different transitions.
You mentioned, moving around, changing jobs. A lot of times our job will give us some disability coverage, like you said, and then we have our own policy. What do you advise physicians that change jobs? Should they come back to you and reassess if they need to change their policy at all?
Yeah, it's really important to review your policies, especially if you change jobs. That's a really big time. If you have a promotion, if you have any kind of life change, you've moved, you got married, you got divorced, you had kids, all of those life changes should be a time to go back and reassess. So when you have a job that provides a group policy, it's only available to you while you're employed by them. So if you do change to being a contractor or you leave that job, you lose those benefits. When you apply for coverage, the company will always say, what is your current income? How much do you have through group? And there's a maximum amount you can get. So if you do have a group policy, you can still supplement with an individual policy. If and when you leave that job, the group policy does fall off. And so that's why you can increase that supplemental policy. What a lot of people don't realize is they say, I don't need a supplemental policy. I have my own group policy. My company's going to take care of me. What they don't realize is when you leave, you lose those benefits. Now, if you want to go get your own policy, you have to go through the underwriting process. You have to answer medical questions. So what you don't want to have happen is you're stuck at your employer because you don't want to lose your benefits. You're afraid, oh gosh, I was just diagnosed with XYZ. I can't leave my employer. I'm never going to be able to go do that locum work because, I've got all these financial obligations and I need my disability policy. So you don't want to be in that kind of situation. And I do see that happening to people.
That's why I think having your own disability insurance policy is so important for finding your own financial freedom. Because like you said, you could get stuck at an employer and in the meantime have accumulated some health diagnoses that would then exclude you from getting your own policy in the future.
Even if you have it through an employer, that doesn't guarantee that the employer is going to always maintain that policy. And so we're also seeing a lot of changes in the industry with budget cuts at hospitals or large groups. And so as the health insurance becomes more expensive, a lot of these groups are trimming their policies. So they're becoming less favorable to have these group policies. So again, you really need to reassess and see, is it going to be comprehensive enough? Can I opt out of it? Am I required to take it? If I leave, can I take it with me? Typically, no. So it's important to understand what you do have. But I also think for physicians that are even coming out of residency, even if they take a job, these are important questions to ask because chances are you're not going to be at that same employer your whole career.
So some locums physicians are working for locums companies that might provide benefits, and other people that are working in different hospitals might be working per diem. Are there any special considerations they need to think about when they're working for a locums company versus per diem?
So what I've seen people who are working for locum companies, typically they provide the liability insurance. And that's really the benefit of working for a locum company versus just per diem, because that can be really hard to obtain individually and it can be really expensive. And it also varies from state to state. So if you're a locum physician, I'm in Colorado and you say, I want to go to Alaska this summer and work locum work. If you go with a locum company, they're going to provide you with that liability insurance. If you just go per diem, they may not have that insurance. And so you're really, at risk. So that's the benefit of going with a locum company because they provide that. Most locum companies don't provide a disability policy. Usually it's just the liability insurance, sometimes health insurance. Typically, they don't provide the disability insurance. And part of it is because people are all over the country. And so it can really vary from state to state.
We've mostly talked about long-term disability insurance so far. Are there any special considerations for short-term disability insurance for locums physicians?
So short-term disability is really expensive to get on your own. People come to me and they say, I'm thinking about getting pregnant. I really want to get a short-term disability policy. You're actually typically better off just putting that money in a savings account than paying for a short-term policy. First of all, when you get the policy, it won't cover anything for 2 years. If you're already thinking about getting pregnant, you're not going to be able to have this policy cover you for that. Number two, it's also really expensive proportionally for what it's providing you. So a short-term policy usually covers you from 2 weeks to 2 months or to 3 months. So it's really intended to be for bad flus or maybe a minor surgery or something of that nature. So honestly, you're better off just putting that money in savings or getting a line of credit. If you can sign up for a short-term policy through your employer, it's going to be less expensive. But individually, I really don't think it's worth it.
We talked a lot about insurance. Outside of insurance, how do you find balance and fulfillment in your work and personal life, given your busy schedule and demanding career?
Well, I've always tried to incorporate various things other than work. I love to exercise, so that's always been something I always get up. I'm a morning person, get up and exercise. I'm married and have 3 border collies who are very active. They require a lot of exercise, so walking 2-3 times a day, they require a lot. I'm a mom, I have kids, that requires a lot, although they're in college right now, so it requires a little bit less. And then I always have something to look forward to. So I always plan some kind of trip. So I always have something kind of that just keeps me going. It's my dangling carrot. So if I'm having a hard day or a hard week, I just think about what I have to look forward to. And I think it's really important to have something to look forward to. I also try to schedule times to get together with friends on a regular basis. That really fills me up. So I think whatever it is that you're doing, I think it's really important to always have something planned that you have to look forward to.
What's the next trip that you're looking forward to right now?
So my older son is studying abroad in Prague. And I've never been. He's living his best life right now. So we're going to be going out there and visiting him. So I'm really looking forward, not only just going and seeing Prague, but seeing him in his new city, where he's living. So that's something really exciting for me.
Yeah, I'm totally the same way. I always have like a vacation planned, or I'm planning a vacation. That's my happy place, and I'm always looking forward to it.
What's your next thing you're looking forward to?
Yeah, we just came back from Florida for a winter break, and that was lovely. We went to Fort Lauderdale and did some CME there. Our next trip is going to be to Hilton Head Island. For spring break, we're going there, and we're going to be, just staying on the beach and taking it easy. That's going to be nice.
Change of weather makes a big difference.
Yes, it's important, especially in upstate New York, to get out and get some sunshine, man, in the wintertime. That's when most of my trips are.
For me, it's just change of scenery. I just need to change my scenery. And it just totally resets you. It's great.
Absolutely. And that concentrated amount of time that you have with your family, I think, whenever you travel, no matter where you're traveling, I feel like those are the things that we think back on and look back on as a family, as this was a beautiful memory. And those are the things we'll remember for the rest of our lives, those snippets of time.
We splurge on experiences, not on stuff. That's always been our thing, because stuff is fine and it's great. And then eventually it's just stuff. So for us, it's always it's making those memories and having experiences together, whether it's a great meal or a trip or something. That's what we really try to place our efforts in.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you buy something, and how many times do you really think back and be like, remember that day we bought that thing and how amazing and happy, I never think of it that way. I never look back in my life and I'm like, oh yeah, that day that I bought that one thing was really special. Certainly loses its luster very, very quickly. So totally agree. Well, are there any remaining comments or tips and tidbits about disability insurance you'd like to share with our audience today?
Well, I think it's important. A lot of times people get a policy and then, they set it aside and they're not sure if it really fits what their needs are, or maybe they bought it and their needs have changed. Their situation has really changed. So even if you have a disability policy, it's probably good to just get an opinion and make sure that it's still doing what it was intending to do. Sometimes prices have changed over time, so make sure you're not overspending on something. So it's really good to evaluate it. I don't generally recommend replacing something unless you can save at least 10%. That's kind of my threshold. Meaning if you have a great policy, don't replace it if you're going to save a couple dollars a month. But if it's something more substantial, it might be worth it. So I think that that's something to be aware of. So oftentimes people come to me and they just say, hey, can you just take a look? And I'm happy to do that.
Well, thank you so much, Jamie, for taking the time to come on our podcast today. I'm so happy to meet you and talk to you, and so happy that our listeners got to benefit from your wisdom and many years in the field. So thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Jamie, thank you for shedding light on the indispensable role of income protection for locums tenens professionals and for sharing your insights and expertise with us today. To our listeners, securing your financial future in the healthcare gig economy starts with understanding and acting on your insurance needs. We encourage you to explore your options and consider how tailored disability insurance can safeguard your career and financial stability. This is Dr. Disha Spath, thanking you for joining us on Finding Financial Freedom with the Frugal Physician. Stay informed, stay protected, and stay frugal, y'all.
The content shared on this podcast should not be taken as individualized financial advice. We are here to share our knowledge and experiences, but it is crucial to consult with professionals such as accountants, financial advisors, or attorneys who can provide personalized guidance based on your specific needs.